Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 59th edition of the Together for Education webinars brought to you by Notebook. Upfront, we would like to thank each and every one of you. Month after month, it is your support and patronage that has kept us going. Today, when I say that welcome to the 59th episode, words cannot express the kind of pride that we feel in saying that it's 59th. When we started long back, months ago, the lockdown had just started. We had all expected it to be much shorter. And we had said, since teachers need to get used to digital learning platforms, why not set up a webinar? The initial thought was this would run for a few months. We would get talking to a few schools. But then this took a life of its own. It has grown beyond our wildest imaginations. We started with topics that were curricular, went extracurricular. Now we've spoken about mental health. And today we speak about a topic that is perhaps at the core of every school: excellence. We call these schools lighthouses because these schools have become a beacon to the others around them on how to develop centers of excellence. When I say centers of excellence, there are perhaps two dimensions to it. One, obviously, every school wants to, competitively, amongst other schools in its region, stand out. That is one aspect of being a center of excellence. The other, of course, is inspiring excellence. All those students who come to you and stay with you for years before stepping out into the world, I'm sure each and every one of you experienced educators do your best in ensuring that in each of them, you inspire the pursuit of excellence. In the last few months, we have doffed our hats to these teachers multiple times because the way the teachers have adopted online learning and adapted to the given situation has been nothing short of a miracle. On that note, let us start the session today. Before I invite the speakers, we will show you a small clip of one of the Notebook videos. Notebook, as most of you know, is a digital learning platform where we create short, engaging videos tailored to the school curriculum. These videos can be used by teachers during offline and online classes, where these short videos provide a visual segue into visualizing a topic better. Months later, when the student at home is preparing for an exam, perhaps, they have access to these same videos on their personal devices, be it a laptop, a tablet, or a smartphone. And they can make use of these videos to help understand topics and revise them better. What I will do now is play you a small clip of one of the Notebook videos. This is from Class 11 Accountancy.
This is Chitragupta, the accountant of gods. Mythology says that he is the assistant of Yama, the Hindu god of death, and he keeps records of the good and bad karma of all of us living on earth, and what exactly happens based on this record keeping. We humans are assigned our places in heaven or hell. Isn't that a fair, interesting concept, students? From the world of gods and goddesses, let's navigate to the world of humans. Hello and welcome to Notebook's video lesson on Introduction to Accounting. This is 4000 BC, that is 6000 years ago. And yes, we take a time machine for this journey. First, we land at Babylonia, the city of commerce, and we see payment of wages and expenses being made. And yes, they are using clay tablets to keep the records. Our next stop is at Egypt. And what do we see amidst the pyramids, the sphinxes, and the stretches of magnificent civilization? We see the royal accounting systems. The treasure keepers take a daily stock of treasures at day end and send a report to the prime ministers, the wazirs as they call. The third stop is at Greece. We see an impressive accounting system, maintenance of government financial transactions, apportionment of revenues received, and managing the overall receipts and payments at a macro level. Now we take the time machine and go travel forward to 2000 BC. This is China, and we see an extremely sophisticated form of government accounting. Finally, we are back to India, and this is 23 centuries back. Kautilya is a minister in Chandragupta's kingdom. This is the book written by him, Arthashastra, and this book is all about accounting record.
As you could see, we use the art of storytelling to introduce various curricular topics to our students. This small video is what we call an interest builder, and on notebooks portals, whether it's the mobile app or the notebook.school website, you would find more than 10,000 such videos, beginning with these short interest builders to get students hooked to the joy of learning. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to move on to our first speaker. Our first speaker today is Mr. Philip Burrett. Mr. Burrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. He served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Student Welfare, Dean of Activities, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Burrett qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. So privileged to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Bayu. I hope I am audible here.
Yes, sir. Loud and clear. Clearly, sir.
Yeah. So a very good evening to you, Shubayu, Achin, Abhishek, our entire notebook team, and especially to our panelists, Sarika, who I'm very happy that she's accepted the call, Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Das, and also to our listeners who tuned in. So how do you grow a center of excellence? I am going to talk through my experience at the Doon School, which I think is certainly an institute that I am proud of and India is proud of. And also with my travels to other schools, like Eton and Harrow and Phillips Exeter. I've had the privilege of actually being and living in these wonderful institutions. I particularly like the metaphor of the lighthouse, because a lighthouse does three things. It sheds light on everyone. It's just not shedding light on itself. It sheds light to others, to help others along and keep them away from the rocky shores. It also, the second thing it does, lighthouses stand the test of time, the buffeting of the waves and the storms, and they last. They tend to continue. And the third thing is that each lighthouse, I think, has its own unique signature, its light signature in the Nautical Almanac. So no two lighthouses are alike in their signature. And that's why sailors know exactly where they are. Otherwise, they'll be mixed up. So same thing with our educational institutions. Good institutions are those that reach out to others and shed their light to many. They also stand the test of time like lighthouses. And each school is unique. Very often we try and make other schools like ours, but they cannot be another Doon School. You can have wonderful institutions, but each one with their strange and rare uniqueness. And I'd like to also say that how did Doon become a center of excellence? And the first thing is that you select excellent leaders. Your first leaders, your founder principals, have to be the ones that breathe the spirit into the school. And so we looked, and Doon looked for principals from other great institutions. Our first two headmasters came from Eton, and a lot of our early laws and governing policies were Etonian. And then what these great men did was they picked their best teams. They went out to Shanti Niketan to get their artists. We had Jatin Das, we had Sudhir Kashtogi. We got the best people for the job. And we didn't spare any effort or money to get the best musical talent, the best mathematics teachers, because it's very important that we start well. After you establish a good team, I think we have to go out and get meritocratic students. It's important. I know some people will debate this and say, why do you have to get the best students? You can get anyone and make him a great student. But recently I heard in this wonderful university called Ashoka, where they left 150 seats unfilled because they didn't get the type of students they were looking for. So they gave up 150 seats just to retain or maintain that excellence, that standard of excellence. So we also go out and get the best students for our institutions. The other thing is that we need to work on these people we employ. There's no point just getting the best staff. I think we need to nurture and inculcate in them the value systems and the ethics that the school is built on. And these people need to be nurtured, because anyone can build a great building and walls and play fields and swimming pools. But it is the faculty, it is your teaching faculty that is the best investment for great institutions. And I still would say that one should go for people with the best attitude, the learning attitude, an open mindset, not a fixed mindset. Again, I'm quoting Quirrell Beck over here, great educationist. It is the open and growth mindset that we need to look for in faculty, rather than pick brilliant people with paper degrees, qualifications, but are not willing to grow with the school, with the institutions. Now, very often Doon School staff, having gained their experience, go to other schools as headmasters and principals. And we always look forward to this. I know we miss them when they go, but what they do is they take a little of the Doon School elsewhere. So people who couldn't come to school, these people take a little of Doon School away from school and they build other institutions. The other thing that great institutions do is that within the school, there are people with great skills in the classroom, skills outside the classroom. But very often, the entire staff doesn't really share their brilliance. So, you know what great institutions do? They share their own teacher skills with the entire staff. They showcase the best to the rest. For example, if I have a physics teacher who's particularly outstanding, his classes benefit. Yes. But what about the other teachers in school? Shouldn't the other teachers realize and see what he's doing in class? So he is, we walk into his labs, we are invited to see what he does. And like this, the rest of the staff learn from one brilliant man. Similarly, there could be an art teacher who's doing some fantastic work in her class or her lab. And we all need to share this. Very gradually, great institutions build tradition. And this tradition is like the DNA, it's imbibed by everyone who comes in. From the darban at the gate to every student, we imbibe these traditions. And this sets the standards. Also, great institutions, it takes time to build, decades, years, hundreds of years. But I've seen institutions fall on their face in a few months. Reputations can fall. And therefore, it is incumbent on everyone, every student, every teacher, to feel that he is a stakeholder and to look after, to nurture their institutions, because reputations are difficult to maintain. Let me go on to talking to you about what happened to me when I joined Doon School. There were teachers who took me under their wing. Now, I wasn't a spring chicken when I came to school. I was in my 30s. But yet there were mentors who shared with me the school's vision and inducted me into the Doon School, even though I had 11 years experience when I came to school. Now, Also, there has to be a constant, regular evaluation, self-evaluation, an openness to receive feedback from people outside school. Because how a school or institution is perceived by outsiders is very important. Because we can wear blinkers, we can have blinkered vision and think we're the best. Until we get open and listen to feedback, we are not going to grow and correct ourselves. So in the Doon School, every 5 years, we had a revisioning of our aims. A new vision was developed. And over the next 5 years, subcommittees were set up to further this vision. We have academic subcommittees, building subcommittees, fundraising subcommittees, sports subcommittees. And we grew and changed over the next 5 years. Also, there has to be this inner drive, again, led by the staff and the headmaster, to seek excellence. This desire to be better and better than you were is what really made our school stand out. I know that there was a very successful Goldman Sachs banker who I met once, ex Doon School boy. I asked him, what is the one thing that you learned from school? What did you take away from school? And he scratched his head and said, sir, this desire for excellence. Whatever I did, I wanted to be excellent. And it is not trying to compete with others so much as trying to compete with yourself. And at the Doon School, we have a thing called the standard tests, which is actually a physical chart. You start with 2 press-ups and a 1 km run, and it goes on and on for the next 6 years. And you get better and better and better till you get your gold standards and silver standards. It is a training in improving yourself and competing with yourself, and not necessarily competing with others. Another example of excellence would be, I once ran a MUN conference at the Doon School, and I was in charge of the accommodation. So I got pretty cheap accommodation at the Oil and Natural Gas Commission guest house. And I had seen the accommodation. I was very happy with it. But what happened, the monsoons came down, and then when the boys who were with me took a look at the accommodation, they were appalled with the dampness of the walls. And they came to me late at night, one day before the conference was to open, and said, sir, we cannot keep our guests here. I said, but I've paid the money and this is where they're going to stay. They're coming in tomorrow. They said, no, sir, we will be very ashamed as Doon School boys if our guests stayed here. And would you believe it? Overnight, we went to 2 hotels and redid the entire accommodation, because these boys felt that we would have egg on our face if our guests stayed in anything like that. So that is what I would say was a quest, a striving to be excellent. Now, some schools remain schools. Some colleges remain colleges. But some institutions become institutions because they want to turn around. And so, in India, we have the St. Xavier's, the St. Stephen's, the IITs, the IMA, the Indian Military Academy, is a center of excellence. It's a lighthouse out there. Just like Harrow, Eton, Winchester, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, these are synonymous with places that produce consistently great people. And it is what they have done, what they have achieved, and what they have produced. And their light, as I said, shines all over. So even though these places have been founded in the 15th and 16th centuries, they still survive. We have the Oxford University Press, we have the Cambridge Syndicate Examinations, we have the Harvard Business Reviews. They're there for everyone, not for us, not for just the people who join those institutions. Now, no school is good at everything. We have these in Educational World and so many of these magazines, we have school ratings, the best schools in the country, the best boarding schools, which you see. Now, I don't have much faith in that, because they judge you on a number of parameters like staff, faculty, alumni, results, sports facilities, and so many things. Now, not every school is good at everything, but every school has its USP. It is strong in some areas. we need to nurture these areas. And where you are not so strong, well, we could put in some efforts to be better. But every school is known for some aspect, it's some USP, right? Uh, now, uh, I would say another thing about a good institution is a lot of training that goes on within the four walls, in service training. Very important to train and keep on training staff. Great institutions guard the reputations they've built up. As I said earlier, all of us have to be caretakers of this wonderful reputation that takes decades to build. Word of mouth is a wonderful way in which an institution gets known. And I would say great institutions practice total quality management, right from the person at the gate to the headmaster's secretariat to the gardener to every teacher. Everyone has to be on his toes, believing that the world is watching and that every guest is a VIP. And I have seen institutions that really make people feel very important. We need to have pride in what we do, pride in the uniforms, pride in our achievements, pride in our traditions, our slogans, the team songs, the anthems, the prayers, the artwork, the older staff. In fact, the Doon School is very proud of the fact that the Indian national anthem, written by Tagore, was the school song in 1935. It was first sung as a school song and later became the national anthem of free India. And then we set up what is called a teacher center at the Doon School, which I think all schools should have, where we had faculty giving workshops and conducting training sessions. We had a dedicated person who ran this faculty, this facility, and we invited people and schools and teachers, and we had ongoing programs to share our knowledge with outside people, people less fortunate than ourselves. And this again takes me to my next point, is that all institutions have to care for other institutions around about. Good schools take over and guide, nurture, and help other schools that are less fortunate. Exchange programs are very important because our faculty goes out and sees the best practices that are being followed in other schools. We come back, and we must be humble enough to accept that there are people out there who do it better than us. There are smaller schools down the street who do things better than the Doon School, and we have to be humble enough to learn from them. We cannot rest on our laurels. We need to always revamp, re-envisage, reinvent ourselves as we go along. Nothing is consistent. Nothing is constant. And whenever a staff member goes out for any training, any workshop, any program, he comes back and he shares this with the rest of the school, the rest of the staff. There's ongoing training, ongoing. It's very easy for schools to become insular, very parochial, and believe we are the best. That is a danger that all institutions face. But this constant drive to learn, as I said, reinvent, go out, see what's the best there. This is what makes schools into institutions. And I think that's what I have to say about how we can grow from good to great. It's the effort that we have to keep praising. It's not the achievement, it's the effort. I have a wonderful story from Harsha Bogle, who was addressing, I think, one of the IITs or his own alumni. It's the its old alma mater, the IIM Ahmedabad. And he took the example, and I know Shubhayu loved this, two cricketers, Tendulkar and Kamli, who were friends and who were contemporaries. Whenever Kamli failed, he was in the mindset that Carol Dweck talks about, is a fixed mindset. He failed and therefore he's not good enough. And he got into depression and he got low and he went out to the pubs. Whereas when Tendulkar failed, he had a growth mindset. He went back to the nets and he started working on his game. And Tendulkar became who we all know he became, And Kamli, poor Kamli, who I think was even more endowed in talent than Tendulkar, fell by the wayside. And great institutions have to have this growth mindset. If you do something wrong, we go back to the nets. We don't sit down with our head in our hands. And with that, I look forward to the views of our panel. I look forward to Achin, who's always brilliant. Thank you very much for listening to me. Over to you, Shabai.
Thank you so much, sir. Keeping with the cricket metaphors that we do every week, uh, always great to have an opening batsman like you. Well, with that wonderful rolling start, it is now time that I introduce to you your second speaker. Our next speaker is Achin Bhattacharya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. He is a fellow of the ICAI and a member of CPA Australia. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Shubhai, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, loud and clear.
I once again welcome all of you to today's session. A very special welcome to our esteemed panel for taking their time out for today's discussion. And I really look forward to the deliberation on this very enlightening topic. Lighthouses, as we are all aware, are age-old concepts. These were guiding sources of light for boats and ships sailing on oceans. Now, one of the earliest known lighthouses is the Pharos of Alexandria, built by Ptolemy I and his son Ptolemy II. Now, this one is really interesting, considering the fact that this is regarded as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. For centuries, this was the tallest man-made structure in the world. That sounds quite behind in time, right? Considering the fact that this was constructed between 300 and 280 BC. You'll be equally surprised to know that one of the earliest lighthouses built in India were only a few centuries later than that, in 640 AD, by Pallava king Mahendra Pallava. And this is now protected by Archaeological Survey of India. So what are the purposes of these lighthouses? Principally, they are built to provide an aid to navigation to passing ships and vessels on the sea. Sounds exciting, isn't it? So today, when we discuss this topic, we really couldn't think of a better name. I guess this is very self-explanatory and very appropriate. Now, I firmly believe that it is not only important to have a vision, it's equally important to share it. It's not only important to be resourceful, I guess it is more important to reach out to those in need and to share your resources. We never know where next generation of leaders will come from. Next generation of innovators, thought leaders may come from aspirational districts. Now, little help, a helping hand, little empathy may really do wonders. And I believe when it comes to resource sharing, any kind of resource sharing, I always believe it's a two-way process. I think Burrett have very appropriately mentioned that we all learn from each other. Even a school as eminent as Doon School might have certain takeaways from a much smaller institution, some best practices which they may inculcate and find value in it. It's like a very classic example of one of your distant relatives who may not be as fortunate as privileged or as well-to-do as you are, coming for a stay. Now, I believe it's a two-way learning, right? It's our responsibility, it's your responsibility to give them a sneak peek into a good life, into a vision. It may inspire him or her, or might be his or her child to do well in life. But equally important, your child may learn virtues and values like humility, or things that he or she takes for granted. They'll understand the value of it. So we all learn from each other. I remember a very interesting and insightful literary work by Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, Rajarshi. In that, the poet has very appropriately written, and I just quote one line: if the city is on fire, places of worship cannot be safe. If we really want peace, tranquility, and good life for ourselves, our neighbor's peace and well-being is as important to us as our own peace and well-being. In fact, this pandemic has again proved beyond doubt that as a society, we are interconnected. As a civilization, as a race, we are all interdependent on each other. None of us can exist in isolation. We are all affected by each other's action. I guess, and also, before going to the details of the topic, I'm left with one question, that when we share our resources with someone, when we lend a helping hand, when we really wait for someone else to climb the stairs and reach the same pedestal, same platform as we are, does it really slow our pace? I believe it's completely the other way around. Today, if we are giving a helping hand to someone down the lane, there might be a situation where we may need a helping hand. And I guess it helps us feel much more fulfilled as a person. Now, coming to this concept of resource sharing, lighthouses, a lighthouse is a metaphor, resource sharing, school clusters. I think this is a very important and appropriate topic. And this has also been mentioned in the new Education Policy 2020. And the rationale behind this, as to why the policy has considered this in detail, even the earlier committee report, 291 pages, there was sufficient deliberation on this. And later point of time, the final policy, which is a 60-pager, also mentioned this in sufficient details. And there's a reason behind this. The establishment of primary schools in every habitation across the country, which was earlier driven by Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and now subsumed under Samagra Shiksha scheme, and other important efforts across the states, we cannot deny there's been a lot of good work that has happened, has actually helped to ensure near universal access to primary schools. It has also led to the development of numerous very small schools, a lot of small schools. As per data, nearly 28% of India's public primary schools and almost 14% of India's upper primary schools have less than 30 students, 30. So you understand, right, the magnitude of the problem. Now, the average number of students per grade in elementary schooling system, when I say elementary schooling, of course, grades 1 to 8, is about 14, with a notable proportion below 6. So we understand that there are small schools and numbers are really, really small. There are nearly 108,000 single teacher schools. And the majority of them, almost around 85,000, being primary schools, which serves between grades 1 to 5. Now, these smaller schools, we all understand, like as esteemed educators, all of you are completely aware that this basically has rendered it economically suboptimal and operationally complex to run good schools in terms of deployment of teachers, provision of other resources, physical resources. Now, this ends up in a situation. So what we're left with is teachers are often required to teach multiple grades at a time, multiple subjects. They may need to take up subjects which are not their area of specialization. They may not have any prior background. And very important areas like, for example, art, music, sports are often ignored. Lack of physical resources, lack of lab equipment, lack of sports equipment, lack of library books. Also, I guess the isolation of small schools has a negative effect on education and the teacher learning process. We all know teachers function best in communities, and so do students, right? We all need communities, teams to function. Now, we have been discussing a lot about consolidation of schools. The policy also discusses in detail about consolidation of schools. But there's a practical challenge that has to be kept in mind. The policy recognizes this, that it must be carried out very judiciously and only when there's no impact on access. Because the whole concept, the whole reason why so many schools exist, single teacher schools, small primary schools, is to ensure young learners are not impaired in terms of access. Now, the policy is very ambitious in the way it has dealt with it. By 2025, we plan to adopt innovative mechanisms to group or rationalize schools. Now, the objective behind this is to ensure that every school or every cluster has adequate number of counselors, trained social workers, teachers, maybe shared teachers, a single, an esteemed educator taking up parallel teaching assignments, and just to ensure that all subjects or areas like which are often ignored, like arts, music, are not ignored. Vocational subjects, they are taken up. And adequate resource sharing, like library, science labs, computer labs, skill labs, playground, sports equipment, and facilities. Now, a sense of community is to be built to overcome the isolation of teachers, students, and schools. Sounds, as far as the policy is concerned, I think the intent is firmly in place, like holding joint activities, for example, science or arts exhibitions, quiz, debate, sports meet, fairs. So this will lead to cooperation and support across schools, and also help in improved governance of schools, which also is, I think, is important. Now, when we discuss about this rationalization, one particular area that the policy has expressly deliberated upon is one possible mechanism, is the way I'll put it. Establishment of grouping structure called school complexes. Now, the school complex should ideally consist of one secondary school together with all other schools offering lower grades in its neighborhood. Neighborhoods including Anganwadis, in a radius of 5 to 10 kilometers, because logically considering the fact that children also need to travel in order to ensure access to facilities. So a radius of 5 to 10 kilometers has been prescribed. Now, many of you will recollect that this suggestion was first made by Education Commission in the year 1964. The commission was around 64-66. It was first made, but that point of time it was not implemented. Now, this policy strongly endorses the idea of school complex and clusters. Now, I think this is really a very good idea, and if implemented properly, this can lead to a lot of benefits. Now, it has its own challenges in terms of implementation. I don't deny the fact, but the aim is greater resource efficiency and more effective functioning, coordination, and also it will lead to better leadership and governance in schools within the cluster. Now, I think this has been expressly taken up in the policy, considering the fact that so many primary schools, schools with single teacher facing its own challenge, etc. Hence, this has been appropriately taken. Now, there's another important concept that has been explained in the policy, which I found really, really interesting. And that basically the aim of that is to ensure cooperation and positive synergy among schools, especially between public and private schools. Now, this is based on the concept of twinning or pairing. The policy aims to pair one public school with one private school. And this will be adopted across the country so that such paired schools may interact with each other, share resources, learn from each other, and document the best practices. So it's a two-way learning process, which should lead to resource sharing and best practice sharing. Another important aspect that has been discussed in the policy is the establishment of day boarding facilities called Bal Bhavans, where children of all ages can visit once a week. Now, this also will be community-based, again based on the concept of resource sharing, as a part of school cluster or complex. So the policy aims at establishing Bal Bhavans, which also I find completely in sync with what the policy aspires to do. Now, I think school should be a point of celebration and honor for the whole community, and that is what the policy expressly aims to do. To restore the dignity of schools as an institution, celebrate days like Foundation Day of the school, celebrate it along with the community, display lists like list of important alumni, honor them. Another very important aspect that has been highlighted in the policy and prescribed is to utilize unutilized capacity of school infra. Now, how to do that? There are many schools which may be having excess capacity, unutilized capacity. How to utilize them to promote social, intellectual, and volunteer activities. How to promote social cohesion during non-teaching hours, schooling hours, and how to promote the schools as Samajik Chetna Kendra. That's the terminology the policy uses. So I think these were some important aspects that were highlighted in the policy, which deliberates on the concept of resource sharing and the fact that ideas like twinning of public and private institutions, ideas like school clusters, where one secondary school playing the sheet anchor role and other schools being benefited from it. So these are some important aspects that I wanted to discuss. I thank all of you for giving me a patient hearing. And on these very important aspects, on this very important deliberation, I look forward to hear the views of our esteemed panel especially with regard to the implementation part. What are the challenges that they envisage, practical feasibility, and of course, from their wealth of experience, other aspects that they would like to share. Over to you, Shubhai.
Thank you so much, Ashin. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think we have perfectly set the stage for our esteemed panelists. We have a wonderful panel discussion lined up for you. Let me quickly introduce the panelists to you, and then we shall begin the discussion. We are very privileged to have with us Mrs. Sarika Panchi. Mrs. Panchi finished her graduation in economics and English from DAV Dehradun, and then went on to complete her MBA at Narsi Monji College, Mumbai. Subsequently, she also did an executive MBA from Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. She started her career with Jet Airways and then moved to Virgin Atlantic. After working in the skies for 10 years, she joined the Kingfisher Airlines corporate office. She has worked with IBM as well, and then she started working as a communication consultant. Currently, she is the co-founder and CEO of Word of Mouth, which is a communication consultancy since 2015. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining. Privileged to have you with us. We also have with us Mr. Jugal Kishore Agarwal, who is the principal of the Aryan Public School at Lohagal, Ajmer, which is the educational hub of present Rajasthan. He has led many leading schools in various capacities, be it principal, coordinator, center superintendent, and for various CBSE exams. He has also been in social service through Rotary Club and Lions Club as an active member in the city of Jaipur, the capital city of the erstwhile state of Rajputana. Mr. Agrawal has been the recipient of the prestigious British Council's International School Award 2017 to 2020 as project coordinator. He has also been recognized and awarded by Lions Club Jaipur, Rotary Club Jaipur, and Lions Club Aravali Abu Road for his passion to serve humanity better. Thank you so much for joining, sir. Privileged to have you with us again. We also have with us Mr. Dilip Kumar Das, who is the principal of the Tapovan Sanskar Dham School at Navsari, Gujarat. He holds an MSc, a B.Ed, an MBA, a LLB, and a DIRT degrees. He has an experience of 29 years in the education field in CBSE schools only. As a principal, he has 10 years of experience in CBSE. He has been handling a number of schools in Maharashtra and Gujarat and is currently working as a CBSE Inspection Committee member. Sir, thank you so much for joining. Again, our privilege to have you with us today. I will stop my share and switch on my camera so that we can all see each other. So before I have a few questions for you, I would request all of you to give your opening thoughts, your initial thoughts about schools being centers of excellence. Mr. Agrawal, if you may start with you. Would request you to unmute yourself, sir.
Okay. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay. Good evening, everyone on the panel, and good evening, Mr. Subhayu, Mr. Philippe, and others. It's a proud privilege to again, second time, getting a chance to address you people and my very good audience here. What my thought of area is, what I think is, first of all, let us focus on what is center of excellence. A center of excellence to me is a catalyst who, without getting affected or participating, is working for the society, for individuals, for the entire country, for its betterment. Say, for example, like CBSE has also started Center of Excellence. They are organizing several trainings and other. And by being the part of these trainings, I have realized that, of course, a Center of Excellence has something to do really with. Okay, and then this Center of Excellence, how school can be, which you have given a perfect metaphor, that lighthouse. This lighthouse, the boats which are there in the sea or some other different kind of water bodies, they are all guided by that lighthouse. So they don't go in different or they don't lose their path. They don't move here and there uselessly, aimlessly. Similar with the new generation, youngsters, young students of society, young people of society, and schools play a big role in that. So a perfect metaphor you people have selected, and I'm so happy that lighthouse could only be the metaphor for a school. For see, like schools. So lot of training, because the mindset of the young is a very it can be, it can create a havoc also if it is not guided properly. So schools, they play a big role in that. Their energy is directed in positive direction. These days, like in COVID times, what we can say is a center of excellence, the schools are the most affected. Even then, irrespective of the fact what is happening with schools and how other things are happening, each and every teacher, I would say, is committed to the guidance and throwing light as a lighthouse gives direction to the misguided boats. Similarly, the whole society, the whole country, even the buildings are shut, but they are giving them light. They are providing them path. There may be a certain examples where people may not be attending, and but then this is actually the role of a center of excellence. And these COVID times have really proved it, that a school can only be a perfect lighthouse for this society, which may find some, perverts, bringing them back to the path. Similarly, if I talk about a school, um, technological advancement these days, like you can say, there were teachers, there were times when okay, one or two or a few of them were technologically advanced and they could help teachers, and the chalk and the talk thing was happening. Today the teacher who even had not seen the laptop or computer or did not work on its own, they're using it so very nicely. So it has come as a boon, a blessing in disguise, I would say. So a center of excellence is this only, which adjusts itself as per the need of the time, need of the hour, and guide the society, bring back the things on track. How there are certain other aspects related to it, like how center of excellence, what role, what different things that it can play, like measuring performance. Now, how what a school is doing, uh, students are at home, even then their performance is perfectly being measured. In fact, now people are becoming even more qualitative. Center of excellence, these schools, these lighthouses are becoming even more qualitative. And just yesterday only, there was one incident happened. One of the parents, she came to us in the school and she was telling that I'm so very happy to see that teachers, they have to work so much of so much of hard work they have to put in to bring the students on track. In fact, that I think her son, he's in eighth, I think. Last 7 years, I did not know how the students are taught in the class. Okay, long back when I was in school, I had some idea, but then really these days, schools have changed and there is a lot of hard work being done. So this is something a center of excellence does. Guidance and governance, this is also coming from a center of excellence only. uh, like even after the child leaves school, there are alumni, they become, and it's been almost more than 20 years, 2 decades. I see many students, even they still look for me, that give me some guidance, or what should I do in this situation. I'm not talking about subject matter or their expertise in that. They are experts of their fields. Now probably we won't be able to teach them the level of the level they are maintaining, but for life experience they are still looking at their lighthouse. This is, which is school only, and their teachers. And of course, now when in a position of doing some sort of administration, we can also provide them some kind of guidance. So uh, this really, schools in a way uh, are a center of excellence. Yeah, of course, there is one point. I just like I gave the example of a parent. Parents can also be great contributors in this fact. Like there is one practice that we are going to start, and we have almost started that we are now going to invite the parents also, who are experts in their fields. Like if somebody is serving in a police department, somebody is serving in coming from a medical department, and then they also can come and discuss all the ins and outs of that particular field. That by being in this service, uh, what do you feel? Should the youngsters think of joining that field? What day-to-day challenges that they are coming across? So those things also being taken care. So parents can also contribute a lot to make a school a center of excellence. Similarly, technology and the traditional way, the traditionally what schools have been doing, the same can be again done, you know. And I don't know how people will take it, but this COVID, though of course we have suffered almost a year now, and means it is coming on nerves. Schools are still shut, and every month you get a notification that now the schools are closed till 30th November and 31st December, and it's still going on. But then, to some extent, I will say it has come as a blessing in disguise also. It is actually giving the society, of course, a thought that yes, teachers are really doing their hard work, and the schools are a must for the society to give a perfect light to guide the society, the perverts, the people who are like, there was a time when I remember 30-40 years back, when we used to be in school and colleges, tuition or study or going for some kind of extra training is just for those who are weaker. But now you can see even the best, and in fact the best are going for coachings and all the other and guidance. So uh, schools, they are the best center of excellence. They are the ones which will keep guiding, keep giving them light to the society, and they only teach what is relationship, how they are going to grow with your relationship. We forget everybody, but we don't forget our school teachers, school friends. So why even you may be remembering that you do know, you do remember your school friends more than anybody else who came later part in the later part of your life. So this is what my opening remarks for this I can share with. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I think that sets the stage wonderfully. I will also go across to Mr. Dilip Das for his, excuse me, his opening remarks. Your thoughts about schools as beacons of excellence.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for inviting me in this because these are the intellectuals. All intellectuals are there. My so many friends are here also, and you have done nice job, sir. I have some points to say about the Center of Excellence. Whenever you say the Center of Excellence, I thought in different way, and which way I am handling. I am handling now the 7 schools and my own school. This way, this though I am handling this, so I thought my idea in the Center of Excellence it came to that it depend upon the particular focus areas to the center, any school or I mention notebook. Suppose you are taking also you are a center of excellence. What's supposed to be done? The schools, what they should do? The 3 things mainly what I am thinking. One is the technology, and second one is the business concept. That nowadays in schools also I will say in that case, what business concept we are taking. Every school, all private schools are running. The government school that is different, but all private schools are coming under business concept. That also supposed to taken in mind. Skills and other board areas of the studies. These all the things supposed to be taken. But one point today I will discuss. My main focus is on this. Now it is 5 till 5 minutes I have kept. Sir, please, with your permission only, I am starting this. 5 minutes only I will discuss based on this. Technology. Technology is vast. Suppose that if we will not go for technology, we can't do anything. It is already mentioned that if after after 2030, those who will not be in technology, they will be eliminated from this education. The teachers, they have to adapt now. How the teachers adapted in this pandemic, so all have to adapt the technology. In this technology, what they have to do? One thing I want to say, that is they have to teach the all and the school management or school, those who want to be a center of excellence, what they have to do. Main thing is the data analytic. This is based on the data analytic, means based on this what you have to collect the data. Now what all of you are doing this, just as last CC came to our 2007, we tried to implement it, and number of data we collected that time. But the best thing, now the data we don't take. But I feel if you will take by using the data analysis, using technology, data analysis, if you will do, then definitely your performance level will improve. So there what you can, whatever you want, you can do by using the data analysis. So for this case, what's supposed to be done? One is the integrates new ideas, innovative the pedagogical efficiency. These things supposed to be inculcated, and all those who are trying for excellence, center of excellence, they have to do this and improve the forecasting demand, and whatever the new standard is coming, with that standard all supposed to go, and identify new and data supported opportunities. These things we have to identify, then only we can come up to level. Effective and accurate new data sources and innovative data gathering techniques supposed to be implemented. These are the technical language I am saying. In general case, what supposed to be? A student is studying in school, he's all the data. Now also we are, some schools are keeping, good schools are keeping their data from, suppose he came from junior and he left after 12th, so his all data supposed to be there. Based on his data analysis, all teachers supposed to work with his performance, not only his behavior, day-to-day life, and every movement data. The data is now no difficult at all, because data everywhere else camera is there. So you capture that and analyze it, and that analysis, you the particular school or center of excellence, they can came to a conclusion that yes, this type of remedy can be taken. So in this case, 4 things I can say. What is the plan, do, check, act? These 4 things if you will apply, then definitely this data analysis will work. The plan, do, check, act, these 4 things is required to analyze your data. After analyzing this, the data, whether that is working or not, you have to implement it and see that data is working or not. If what are the remedies supposed to be given to this data? Because in my schools, in one class there are 40 students. Out of 40 students, they are in their behavior is this way, and they're supposed to change this way, and this supposed to be referred to counselor. So this data will help to refer to counselor, and directly principal can give this data, and after that the counselor can do the perfect work. The counselor's data can be principal can take, and principal has to analyze the data. So these are the things what a school supposed to do. The one after that, this is the data analysis. And about the, as already my colleagues, they have already told about the training and policies. These all the things we all are doing, and we have to do this all this. So my main point is today to say about the data analysis. So if all of our colleagues, those who are all, most of the principals are here and directors are here, but I say that if we will collect this and we will implement it, definitely we will get the good result. And then to be a center of excellence, there is no problem at all. So once again, I am saying to Notebook also, sir, you are doing the great job, and try to be a center of excellence for our country. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. With your kind permission, though, I would like to kind of, because we are mostly seeing you from your laptop and getting your audio from your phone. So, sir, if you could just move the camera a little bit. The camera right now looks a little below. So we are seeing you. Yeah. If you can move up the camera a little. Possible to turn it up a little further, sir? Never mind, sir. We'll fix it very soon. Yeah, perfect. That's perfect, sir. Thank you. Sarika ma'am, if we can come to you next. We have just heard about the importance of the culture of excellence, of data-driven pursuit of excellence, and obviously Mr. Agarwal spoke about the holistic view of excellence being, ingrained in a school. Your initial thoughts, ma'am.
Thank you, Shubhayu, and thank you, the entire Notebook team, firstly, for having me here. I think I find myself to be extremely privileged to be sitting with such stalwarts of the education fraternity. I also thank Mr. Barrett, who has actually referred my name. So I, very humbly, very kindly would say that my remarks and my comments are going to be entirely from a parent's perspective. I'm sorry, but I'm not from this fraternity. So please do pardon me if I bring another the other side opinion. So I think in my mind, needless to say, everybody is very, very aware that school, especially in the formative years of anybody, is a very, very, very important part of a child. As important as parenting, as important as the family itself. I do feel, and I'm sure it is proven, I'm sure everybody agrees here, that anybody, any child, and of course, when that person becomes an adult, the contribution, whether it is from the family and parents and the school, is equal. You can't really blame one or take credit by one. So they are equally important institutions in the development of any human being. Having said that, in my mind, the center of excellence, especially from a school's perspective in today's scenario, is preparing my child to go and face the world. If I manage to inculcate that in my child, whether it is life skills, whether it is going and facing the world, whether it is, being able to be so confident to, go and speak and take risks, that in my mind is a complete center of excellence. I'm also extremely happy to see that education and the entire system today is changing drastically. Gone are the days, and I was in a school in Dehradun, 30 years back. When I compare the system back then to now, especially with the kind of schools that our kids go to today, I do see that there's a huge change in the attitude of the entire, the school organizations, the government, the way it is supporting the policies that they're coming up with, and making it more practical, making it more interactive, making it more lifestyle driven than just judging children on academics or sports. Those were the two things that when we were growing we were judged on. So in my mind, center of excellence is being excellent at everything, at going and facing life. At I'll give you a very small example of I have a 15-year-old son. He's currently in 10th standard, and he actually came to me very recently and he said, Mom, don't you think that we should be taught cooking in school, because that's a life skill, and tomorrow if I leave home and go and live alone, I should know how to prepare my own meal. And I thought that was fantastic. That in my mind is center of excellence, and thankfully today the entire system is becoming like that. Gone are the days that we only looked at report cards and said, oh my god, you're not above 90%. My extremely smart child today wants to be a gamer, and I'm absolutely all right with that, because I think that the school is developing his personality good enough for me to be able to take any path. So that, at least in my mind as a parent, is being the center of excellence in his formative years.
Wonderful, ma'am. Just two things from a very personal standpoint. Given that my culinary expertise extends to Maggie and coffee, I think learning cooking is very important. And second,
Yes.
ma'am, I was working with a sports organization before we started out with the Notebook venture. And just to inform you, there's this championship called the Dota Championship that happens in Germany.
Mhm.
They call it esports. It's primarily gaming. The first prize, to the best of my knowledge, was $56 million.
Yeah.
So gaming is not that bad.
No, I completely agree, Shubhayu. In fact, about a year and a half back, when my son came and told me that, look, I want to be a gamer, and he's a very bright child. Like, he's always scored very well, academically very good. Not the best in sports, but I was always very happy with how he was doing. When he came to me, the first 6 months I resisted, like anybody my age would, because I don't understand that world and all of that. And then I realized that, look, maybe he knows something more than I do, especially in the technology space and in the AI space and, in that entire space. And then I just told him that, look, whatever you want to be, you want to be a chef, you want to be a gamer, whatever, just go and be like the best at it. Don't do it half-heartedly. Make a really good, uh, uh, like make it big. And that's all I could say. And I'm very glad to see that I think more and more people have started thinking like that. And so, going back to Center of Excellence, that in my mind is, grooming our kids the right way through the institutions of schools. I think that is Center of Excellence for me.
Wonderful, ma'am. I must inform JK sir as well as Mr. excuse me, as well as Mr. Dilip Das that ma'am was the parent representative to her son's school board, which is the OSC school in Dehradun. So, and it is really happy occasion that when we have opinions from both sides of the table, because part of my
Yeah,
questions do revolve around parenting.
that's
Uh,
true. That's true.
However, sir, I would come to you, Mr. JK sir. If I had to ask you to list three things, three qualities that make a school stand out as a center of excellence, what would those three qualities to your mind be?
Those three qualities, first of all, I would say that parents' involvement. Like Sarika ji was just talking about this thing, that if my son knew culinary skills also, cooking skills. See, when we are talking about excellence, how that excellence will be achieved. Okay, there is a famous saying that one single person cannot do it. Akela chana bhad nahi phod sakta. So if we put everything for the school, that school has to do this, school has to do the technology thing, the school has to do the academics also, activities as well. And then now, of course, I agree. Even CBSE has come out with art integration learning and art education as well, in which they have included this cooking part as well. So, I mean, through that, you can go for your concept teaching as well. Like my son, he's also in, now he's in 11th. And, but we have taught him cooking at home. My wife, she's working on those skills also. Like we are planning him to send out, and after 12 we are not going to keep him with us, because I want him to let him face life as. So I'll come to those points, Subhaiji, don't worry about, like, I have my way of reaching the points. So first thing is parents involvement. If it is not there, that center of excellence cannot be created. So there are certain things, and that's why, um, I was discussing with our director madam today only, and she's again a wonderful, seasoned scholar. So I just found that yes, it was a wonderful idea of including parents. Like Sarika ji, an expert in communication, and she has been to different airlines also, and she has been working here and there at, and creating excellence in her job with all the responsibilities that she has been shouldering. So here I would say that such parents, so when, if she is leading parents association or some way or the other, she has really those attributes, it will add on to that excellence. So one first thing, that is parents. Without parents cooperation, no school can be a center of excellence. Second thing is technology, which I have, the present school where I am leading as school principal. Each and every teacher, it is made sure, irrespective of the fact that they have done some kind of technology during their school or college education or not, even the Hindi teacher can type and do all the sheets of English, and even English teacher can do the Hindi things also. So irrespective of their subject, their training, whatever, here with we are making it sure that everyone is technologically sound, because it makes a teacher reach that particular desired learning outcome. It can only be made sure through that. So of course, technology is going to play a very, very important role. And these COVID times, I remember March 14, it was a day like which I don't want to remember in my life. I had to vacate my complete hostel that very day and send the students back home, because since then, schools, they have still not opened. So, and now after that, right from just 5 7 days we waited, and then we started reaching out to each and every student through technology only, which of course some training was required in case of a few here and there. So technology is going to play the second very important role. So parents, technology, and of course upgradation, updating, schools, teachers, and every stakeholder, they have to update themselves with whatever the coming changes. In today, the school which I am leading, and the schools which I have been the part of previously, or where I was doing as a teacher, there is a school in Jaipur. I remember that, of course, we also come from some better schools only, but the way, as Sarika ji was saying, that we have not been taught this way. We have not seen that, okay, computer, sometimes, we just used to go and play games only on computers. Computer training was not there exactly the same way as it is being done today. So, uh, a center of excellence is the one which updates itself also with the changing trends of the society. So this is what these three things I think of, Subhaji.
Wonderful, sir. So parents, technology, and the need to be a learning organization or keep updating yourself. Great.
Yes.
Mr. Das, if I may come to you next. The secret recipe to excellence, if I may ask. The three
Three
things that you would
secret
put in.
recipe for center of excellence.
Yes, sir. Three things. We are looking for three spices.
Sir, already Agrawal sir already said all the things. That's only main thing is that we have to all should update ourselves. As I also in my data-driven case, I said that all should update, sir, without updating, because it is so complicated way the people what now they are thinking. If you consider our previous things and now what is happening, our previous teaching method and now this teaching methodology, these all these things are most essential. But what things is essential for exactly, it is now, I may say this, the augmented reality. This is must. Artificial intelligence is must. No, I am from computer science background, and that I am not saying, sir, this is really, this is what is happening. This computer, this when you virtual reality also, you will go for virtual reality. Then the mass media, everyone should know the mass media. If a principal is not up to that level, and he cannot be. So this is one mass media also he has to do. That even if you buy a thumb biometric, he has to know about the biometric. Now the whatever the software people are developing, the software you will see everything is coming in the software. That yes, now I am using software in for my all school. That lesson plans, all lesson plans are in there. It is easier for me to check the lesson plan before Sunday. The Saturday I'll get, and Saturday only I'll check the lesson plans and I'll give direction to them. So it is easier for all of us. So similarly, your result declaration, all these things are coming. This computer, this internet, this technology is required for this. This is one. And the other things I told that the futuristic education, what will happen. This is the augmented reality, what I said, that is. and artificial intelligence, that is these, and media, these all these things the people should know. Then only, as we can't say, we can't leave the parents also. They are our customers. We have to take them. We have to take care of them. And one more thing I want to add here. Whatever you are doing, do. The students, that critical thinking, analytical thinking should be developed. And how it will be developed? It will be developed by creating interest. As now Agrawal sir said, how this is sir, that integration of art, it came, means all every subject supposed to be integrated, art should be integrated, and they have given also. They have given, the CBSE has given what, how it is given, how it can be implemented. So for one art in physics, chemistry, or biology, anywhere else, how it can be implemented. This is already they have given guideline to us. So teachers have to know this, and they have to update it with the CBSE. So these are the three things I said, sir. With these three things, these my recipes go up for the Center of Excellence. So all should know. My students are knowing this. First point I told, the students are knowing about media, about internet, about other things. Similarly, teachers are knowing everything. Similarly, parents are knowing everything. So these three, and it's like the people, those who are dealing with this type of things, this is the, suppose your company or any other companies, they are training the people. They are also taking part here. So in this way, I want to say this recipe will be more and bright.
Wonderful, sir. So we are still with technology, and you specified AI, AR,
Yes.
VR, and obviously parents and upgradation.
Yes.
Sarika ma'am, your turn for the outside in view. We have heard their views inside out.
I think I completely agree with Mr. Agarwal and Mr. Das. One, to have a very inclusive, and by that I mean, like Mr. Agarwal said, if parents and schools can work in tandem. Of course, the
Yes.
government completely supports it with their policies, but it's very important for them to work in tandem, because ultimately both these bodies want the child to develop really well. That partnership, if we can crack it and do it, really well, would be fantastic. I'll give you a very small example, Shubayu. When I used to be in Bombay till about 5 years back, and the school there, I don't want to name the school, but I could never, go and meet the principal unless I had taken a formal appointment, and that too with her secretary and all of that. And then I came to Dehradun, and I met this, wonderful principal, Mr. Batla. He was earlier heading Srinam, and then went to Oasis, and that's how I also met Mr. Barid. I just walked into the school, and I was still looking to change, shift to Dehradun and get admission. And he saw me coming, and he said, "Oh, why don't you come in, have a cup of coffee with me?" And I sat down. I just felt so welcomed, and he was heading the organization. He was the principal of that school, and just the fact that he said, "Why don't you come in? I'll tell you all about the school. Let's have a cup of coffee," and all of that. That told me how he thought. While all our organizations, we have a whole lot of respect for this, specifically for the education field. So there is, naturally a lot of respect for principals, for heads of departments, etc. But for somebody to be so inclusive, it made me as a parent feel very welcome. And I suddenly thought, oh, my child will be in a very safe environment here. And from there on, the journey became, and that's how, of course, later I was taken on board as a parent rep, etc. But then I realized that when he started Oasis, and for everything that we were doing in Oasis, there was parents consideration taken. So our opinions were taken. We would have very formal meetings there. It would be minuted and all of that. And we knew that we were building this organization together. So it was not just the promoters or the school, the entire staff itself. It was also the parents and what they think should be taken into account, and then we were together taking actions for that. So I think that's absolutely there. The second one in my mind is how beautifully the entire system is thankfully changing. I remember when we were growing up, the teachers would pay attention either to the guys who would top the class, or to the guys who would fail because they needed extra attention, and everybody in between, which is almost 60% of the population, was completely disregarded. The 60%ers managed to. I continue to think only if somebody had paid a little attention to that middle 60% people, they would have also gone ahead and in their life. That thankfully today is changing. The at least in the private schools, the teacher child ratio has gone down, so there is more attention being paid to each student, and not necessarily to the guys who are scoring 95% and above, or the guys who are below 35%. There is equal attention to all the kids. There is more wholesome and holistic development happening. So it's not just about sports and academics, it's also about everything else that you do. Can you go and debate? Can you do go and Mr. Barre was talking about how Doon school boys were so keen ki, if somebody's coming and we are hosting them, we should have a certain standard. So that I think is gradually changing, and that's fantastic because it gives the child a very, very holistic development. And of course the need of the hour is just keep evolving. Don't just continue to be what you were 30 years back or 20 years back or even 5 years back, because the way technology is changing and the way the world is changing, if we don't keep pace with that, chances are that we will be left behind, and so will the students in that organization. So yeah, if we can keep pace. I think I've ended up repeating everything else that they said, but I completely agree with both Mr. Das and Mr. Agarwal here.
Wonderful. So for once, we see a situation where the inside out and the outside in view seem to be in great sync.
True.
Yeah.
Now, I have gathered a reputation of playing the devil's advocate. It is now well documented fact that I am going to ask questions that are, far left and far right of center. My first question to all of you, and any of you are free to jump in on this, is when you are considering a school for, let's say, your child, right? In every city, and this is something that we have seen fairly unchanged since the time when I went to school years ago, is that the older schools, the more prestigious schools, are the top draw, right? Schools having perhaps a British legacy, the pre-independent schools get the first draw. Whereas when asked, almost everybody, all three of you said this, that being updated, being modern is very important. Why this dichotomy?
As a parent, I would say, Shubhayu, I don't entirely agree. And I'll tell you, I moved back to Dehradun, and Dehradun is known for its schools, right? Throughout India, it's one of the education hubs in India. I was very clear that I didn't want my child to go to one of the old age schools at all. I was very, very sure, because I've come out from Convent of Jesus and Mary myself, and I know they haven't changed, and I would not want my son to go in a similar school, whether it was that or any other. So I was very clear that I was looking for a modern school, and I made sure that he went to a modern school. So yes, for some of us, I know there's a reputation attached to certain schools. So a lot of parents still go for that reputation. But anybody who understands how the world is changing would want to instead go to a school which is completely about holistic development, more than just oh my god, this is the report card and this is the brand of the school and anything else. So I think slightly that is changing. I wouldn't take but majority would still want to go with whatever, I mean, the reputation, as you just said.
I deliberately ask these questions so that people can differ from my opinion. Please feel free. Yes.
Yeah, actually, can I say something?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Actually, see, it depends on the individuals, like there are certain schools which are new though, but coming up so much in demand that admission is difficult in them. I know certain schools in the city of Jaipur where I was born and brought up. Okay. And of course, this trend is also there that most of the parents, they want to go to those schools which are well established. They are, pre-independence era and all. They have certain reputation attached with them that, okay, so and so Maharaja has studied there and this and that, So that is, of course, there. And like Doon schools, as ma'am was talking about, Sarika ma'am, this personality was there, that particular, because for example, any superstar has studied there, or a political personality was there, or maybe a bureaucrat was there. So now I have to take my son there only. So of course, this mindset is there as a principal for quite a few years. I know this thing. Even when I was a teacher, I could understand this. I used to receive phone calls to have admissions in the school because the school had some reputation attached pre-independence era where I was earlier. So it is there. And at the very same time, there are certain schools in even in small cities or big towns which are coming up so very well. They are new, just 5-10 years old only, and admissions are lined up. It's difficult to get admission there. So it basically uh, it's a changing trend. And more or less, I found that those old schools are also adopting new strategies, new plans. They are updating themselves. And I know certain few schools also, the older ones coming up with new setup, new, they're trying to settle new trends, trend settlers they are trying to be. So every mindset is there. It's not like just, okay, everybody is going for old schools, and otherwise, this growth of schools would not have taken place. New schools would not have come otherwise.
Wonderful, sir. Mr. Das, sir, your take on this.
Here, what I want to say one thing. The schools, what as Agrawal sir said or madam said, that everything is correct. The schools, those who are coming newly with new technology, they are coming. They are charging more, sir. As I told, business concepts. I worked in one school where we were charging 12 lakh per annum per child in Mumbai, because I am from Mumbai. So this is the concept, sir. The best school they are giving that. Okay, no problem. Ekal Mandal school is there, SBKM is there, Ambani school is there. These schools, they are dealing with this, but they are giving good. I agree. But as sir said, that it will depend upon the school people mindset. It may be, but generally people are liking those who are taking more money. What I feel so. If you will come, you will struggle a lot. After 10 years, you will come up to a level to get that. Ekal Mandal in 2000, he started the school. And that time only he kept that 12 lakh rupees, 2000. And now he is having that no entry there at all. They are not using that CBSE school. They are using the IB board. People are crazy towards that. And their students are not staying here, and they are studying abroad. So this is happening, sir. As sir said, this people mindset, it is one point only the people are going. But one more thing is that those who are having money, so they are sending such type of schools to students. And there, one thing I can say, what we are giving to our children, that is not there, sir. That is what is the moral. Is a teacher's value is not there. Teachers are like a facilitator there. Whatever they want, they will say, because you are a general teacher. They are saying there, because my experience I am sharing. This is just a discussion, so I am sharing. You are a teacher. Simple, you are a teacher. You are a facilitator. You are nothing else. If we will do any wrong things, it is for ourselves only. Now in Ria case, Sushant Ria murder case, what happened that Ria, his father said, her father said that yes, it is her life, she will do. Because sometimes I am thinking, we teachers are teaching such type of things to the people. And they are in a good school, reputed school, they came out from that school. So many things are there, sir, in discussion, a lot of time will take. But one thing I agree, those who are in which mindset, they are going to that school, and schools are this way. Some schools are there, those who are taking 1 lakh rupees per annum, and they are doing marvelous. There, if they have 40 students, and 40 out of 40, all are 90+ students. They are giving. As madam said that my student should know, my child should know, he has to face the world. Yes, that only the schools are doing. Because what schools are doing, they are training such a way, the student, whenever at any difficult time, they can solve any problem. That is known as problem solving. They are supposed to, because we had not known. In our life, we had not known how to solve our problem. But they are given number of problems and they are solving the problem, which will help them in their future life to solve problem. What I supposed to say, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I think, again, my job is to ask the difficult questions, and I'm glad that I got great answers. Just one last question, because Lighthouse, the whole concept came from a school being able to kind of lead a cluster of other schools. As Achin was talking about, this is something that NEP is also proposing. Even the competitive environment that also exists between schools in a neighborhood, because you're addressing a certain catchment of potential students. Do you think this is practically feasible? Would a school really open up to sharing their best practices, their best thoughts, their secret sauce with others?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true. That's true. Sorry, I
no,
interrupted
please,
without.
please. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. There is no harm in it. Actually, see, what matters is, um, like you must have seen, there is a line written in most of the letters that we expect that all the guidelines will be followed in letter and spirit. Now, when I am sharing my best practices, like I take my students to international level. International level, what I mean to say, sometimes I take them for a real cultural exchange, or even it might be a virtual exchange. Like today, the whole world knows what is Zoom, what is Google Meet, which I have been doing even 5-7 years back. And of course, 5-7 years back, I came to know this Zoom name first time. But we have been using it. So switching to Zoom or Google Meet, it was so very easy for me. And I was sharing this practice with so many different schools, giving this idea. They did not implement. They tried, they wanted to do it, but they could not do with this spirit. There are certain schools which open when we are sleeping here in India, they are opening. And would you like to do that much of hard collecting children and doing your virtual classroom exchange? Now people are understanding, okay, what is the concept of virtual classroom activity exchange and other things, and which was bringing a real, teaching a rule of grammar on the blackboard or smart board or whichever the board you want. If you are giving them a practical experience, you teach 1000 times grammar and 2000 times you will forget until we get it into practice, until we make it a everyday practice. So of course schools, they must share and they should open up. There is nothing, and even if the school wants to keep it a secret, it can never be, because school belongs to society, and some way or the other things will reach here and there. Nobody can hide any secret anywhere. This is what my experience last 20, 30, 25 years, that no school, I have always been part of education. Earlier I was studying and now I was teaching and some sort of administration doing. So to me, even if you wish to hide, you can't.
Wonderful, sir. Mr. Das, if I may come to you next.
Sir, we can't hide anything, sir. Nowadays, so whatever, what is there, sir? What to hide? Because everything is there in internet, Google, everywhere else, everything is there. Whatever you want, you will get. Suppose your best practice also you can hide, you cannot hide. Because if you will hide from foreign countries, we will take it out. What the people for best practice, and we are implementing number of best practice in our school. So how we are implementing? I implemented one thing, just what I am sharing with you. I told my teachers, it's every week you have to write about yourself, or just one teacher, about one teacher. That teacher will not write, all teacher will write about its good points only. So so 40-50 members, what they will write. After 1 week, we will analyze it whenever the meeting will come. So that I found very good relationship built, between the teachers. So this is one small thing what I discussed now. So these type of thing, if I am implementing, from where I implemented this, I read somewhere else and I thought I have to implement in my school. I implemented. I got good results. So these are the best practices supposed to be said. And now the CBSE has given the learning hub. They are doing fantastic job, sir. But whatever that Sahodaya and all the people there, they were going or not going, doing or not doing. Now in your locality, own locality, the best practice in learning how. So everything should be clear and transparent, and all supposed to uh, do the best. And definitely we should come up.
Ma'am, if I may come to you next, and this is more to do with your current profession. I'm sure compete versus collaborate is a theme that you often dwell with, both in internal as well as external communication. Your take on this, ma'am?
So I think Shubhayu, firstly, this is like almost like a moral dilemma, and any industry would face that. You know, while you were asking this question, I was thinking about the ethical oath. I think the doctors take. So there is, you know, and certain professions are almost like ethic. You know, there's a huge sense of ethics attached to it, and education is that completely. It is what builds the society. You know, it is. So there is a huge a responsibility on the people who are within the education field, and there will always also be another, and because I run a business, I also understand the business dynamics. There will also always also be a need to whatever be profitable as an organization, be the best in, you know, in your space, and be competitive and get the best children. Mr. Das was talking about how some schools are taking very, very high fee because, well, there is a market and people are ready to pay. So that will always exist, and I don't think we can do away from that. I think it's also healthy as far as it's being done in the right spirit. But I do agree that if the policies, you know, the entire framework that education system is, you know, being developed on, if that has the right intent, and I think this comes from a fantastic, whoever thought of this is really, really great, that, you know, you have to not just build yourself, but also build, you know, other organizations through best practices. Um, if we've just put that framework, तो हम बहुत चोरी नहीं कर पाएंगे, you know. Maybe we'll not share some practices, but sooner or later you will, you know, end up, you know, coming to forums where you'll have to say, look, as a school, I'm doing this. I'm sure there are conferences that happen where, you know, there will be best practice sharing. So uh, maybe from a business point of view, we'll hide some, but eventually you'll have to do that. And I think only when you do that, like Mr. Agarwal said, the in intent, in spirit, I think the word, that's the word he used.
Letter and spirit. Yeah.
Right, exactly. In letter and spirit is how we will also be able to take the society ahead. So from a thought perspective, it's fantastic. From an implementation perspective, हो सकता है थोड़ा आगे पीछे हो, but I think it'll be more towards happening than not happening. There will always be some business, you know, competition, and which is also fair, because businesses also need to run, and, you know, at the end of the day, it is also, you know, somebody's also put in their money. But yes, I think it'll happen.
Oh,
to a large
actually,
extent.
I would like to add here, ma'am. The thing is, see, business and school, they are not business schools.
Yes.
Business and school,
Yes.
entirely two different things.
Yes.
And every organization, government organization, which give affiliation or recognition or whatever, you know, the first line is your debit and credit should be equal end of the year.
True.
And they are not profit making organizations. I don't know what practices the others are following, and I don't want to comment on that. So that's nothing to do with this. But to me, you know, education is a public service.
Very
It's
true, sir.
not
Very true.
business, it's not industry.
Yeah.
So here, I mean, I would like to say that whatever the practice, uh, how we teachers can take India on top, and we can go back to our traditionals, you know, our Nalandas and our all different kind of universities which we are known for our education, you know. शिक्षा दान का काम है. हमारा तो system ही पहले ऐसे ही था, you know, this kind of system we have been following, that teachers, there was no salary, but they were very well taken care.
Very true, sir.
These
I
days, there are salaries, there are fees, and I can see it's been almost a year, no teacher is being taken care.
Very true. You're absolutely right. I completely agree. This is like a community service of sort, and this is
Yes,
the one, like I said, this is the one pillar which will take the society ahead, and
yes,
hence there is almost like this moral, ethical, responsibility on
yes.
everybody in the fraternity.
So when
Absolutely
we are saying that a school is not a business, and when it's a non-profitable organization, and when we claim that it is that, our governments and everybody, they claim that it is that, then the teacher should be taken care with
true,
that spirit only.
true,
And
very true.
practices, as a school principal, I would love to share whatever the practice we have, and would like to make India a model for everybody in the entire world. No problem.
Absolutely. I don't know if you know, last year, I think it was last year that Bhutan revised their salary commission in favor of teachers and
Yeah. Yeah.
doctors. Yeah,
Yes.
because I think their current prime minister also himself is a doctor, he's a surgeon,
Yeah.
and he came up with a new policy where the teachers, all teachers across the country, and all doctors, of course, across the
Mhm.
country, their salaries were raised because they said these are the two pillars that will take the country ahead. And I thought that
Yes.
was a
Yes.
fantastic thing for a country to do.
Yeah. If
Yes.
we read our NEP at page number 6, it says this: NEP 2020, the
Right.
teacher will be given its due credit.
Yeah.
Let's see, and we are waiting for NEP 2020. Of course, they are getting their due, but yeah, COVID has opened the whole myth, and whatever the curtains were there, all curtains have opened up. How well we will be taken care, I don't know, but I'm thankful to certain organizations which even during these COVID times, these people, some of them, I know a few of them, those school owners, they sold their own properties and paid salaries to the teachers, even they were not getting a single coin in lieu of their teaching or online classes, whatever they were giving.
Mm.
So, but even then, testing times, adversity, is the uses of, so best is to come out, and these things, what I say, after COVID schools, after COVID, the school life is going to be even a better joy, even a better place. But to some extent, what the damage has been done, and
Mm.
this damage has, created such a havoc among the minds of the existing teachers, that it has curbed any kind of attempt for newcomers to come in this industry, if at all we call it industry and business. So I know society will suffer with good teachers, because those who were thinking of making it a career, I don't know after COVID or how these certain teachers who suffered from different schools will think of coming. I'm sorry if uh, this could be a better platform to speak on this, but personally, I have seen that teachers have been suffering.
So the flip side to that would be during this pandemic, we as an edtech brand have seen an unprecedented number of people applying into developing educational content with us. People who are otherwise engineers and corporates, they have
Yes,
walked in
yes.
and saying, "Do you want some help with your content? We'd be happy to share."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is also happening. But uh, there are certain places, certain schools, certain other areas where it has happened. Of course, these are not some very renowned places, renowned schools, but of course we are inviting parents. We are saying that okay, parents also will contribute, and they also contribute to make it a center of excellence, the lighthouse, the school, the leading light, the beacon, whatever we call it. But this time, to some extent, they have opened eyes, parents, that yes, And here I want to be fair, impartial in my approach. To some extent, even the schools are also responsible. What has been the parents' behavior this time?
Great, sir. I think that's all the questions that I had for all of you. Mr. Das, if you're saying something, we are not being able to hear you. Mr. Das, are you saying something? Because we are not being able to hear you. Am I facing an audio drop? Ma'am, JK sir, if you can just confirm, can you hear Mr. Das?
No, I
No,
think,
I can't.
yeah,
I-
no.
Mr. Das, were you saying something? Because we could not hear anything. We are still not getting audio, sir.
His name is Dilip Das, sir.
Yes, Mr. Dilip Kumar Das.
I think he's on other side. He's on mobile, and his
Yeah, he was putting his audio through the mobile, and
his
video
audio
coming
is
from the
off.
laptop.
He's talking on phone, I think, with somebody.
Possibly.
Mhm.
Well, I think this has been a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me those very off-center questions. And as always, it's been an absolute pleasure hosting you. I will now hand you back to Ochin for his vote of thanks. But this again has been an absolute privilege. Thank you so much. Ochin, over to you.
I think really great session, Shubhai. Am I audible?
Yeah, Ochin, can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. I think a really great session. And of course, the parent discussion was really wonderful. So when we discuss about Center of Excellence, and I think some very, I think the role of school as a Center of Excellence came out very clearly from the discussion. And how society looks at a school, what the expectations are. I remember reading a quote, if I recollect, of Michael Faraday, English scientist who contributed to study of electromagnetism and electrochemistry. He once said, and it's a very strong quote, but he once said, a center of excellence is by definition a place where second-class people may perform first-class work. Now, I'm not going into any class bifurcation, that's too strong a take on it. But the expectation from a center of excellence to promote everyone one step up, to ensure that people really perform to their potential, that I guess is the true spirit. But sir, thank you so much for leading the charge as always and giving us a flying start. Your initial experience at Doon School when you joined, really interesting. And that really explain why institutions like Doon School are true lighthouses. And really wonderful to know about the fact that national anthem, before being our national anthem, was sung in Doon School in 1935. I think true thought leadership, and I really thank you for your take on this. Agarwal sir, Das sir, and Sarika ma'am. I'm really happy with the panel discussion today. It was very seamless and great exchange of views. And Agarwal sir, I completely agree with you when you said how, your take on how students look at schools as lighthouses, even many years down the line after passing out. How they look up to teachers for life advices. And I think three key words: parents, technology, and upgradation, the need of the hour, couldn't have been explained better. Thus, some very interesting concepts you brought in, which of course are very contemporary, whether it be augmented reality, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and how simple things like even biometric, really are the need of the hour. Concepts like augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and how they can really make a huge difference in the way our schooling system works. So I think, again, Sarika ma'am, very interesting to know about your 15-year-old son wanting to get into a career in gaming. We wish him all the success, and I really thank you for your take on the whole issue. From a parent's perspective, it has been really unique, and I completely agree with you and Agarwal sir that parents and school have to work in tandem. And really happy to know about your experience at Oasis. Really wonderful, heartfelt. I think I'll sum up, or I'll end with another very interesting quote by Greek philosopher Aristotle, who said about excellence, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. So really, to chase excellence of that kind, to ensure that it is not an exception, but it's a prevailing attitude, as Colin Powell also once said, former US Secretary of State. I think that really explains the concept of excellence. And there's no denying the fact that schools as institutions are true centers of excellence, have been lighthouse for the society. So with this, I thank all of you for attending today's session. I think very insightful and thoughtful topic on resource sharing and Center of Excellence. I'm sure our esteemed members of the audience go back with great takeaways from our learned panelists, the kind of deliberations. I thank you all. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So can we leave now?
Yeah, sure. We'll just close the platform. Thank you. Thank you so much.